5-6 years ago, I was in Shanksville, Pennsylvania at the 5th anniversary of September 11th when the Westboro Baptists came to visit, and I was broadcasting, and they said some rather coarse things to my then 12-year-old son regarding where he was going to spend the rest of eternity because I wasn't forcing the government to stop people from being gay. Instead of getting angry, which my wife, believe me, very much was, I took the opportunity with all three of my kids to sit down and say, the United States and our Constitution is a difficult concept because it forces us to look upon people who are saying things we don't like and we don't agree with and make us very mad and say, I have to defend your right to say that. I hope it had an impact on my sons. I've given them a copy of this book because I hope that has an impact on them as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the author of Government of Wolves, to talk with you, to sign books, and to have a wonderful evening. Ladies and gentlemen, John Whitehead.
I was not going to open with this, but I can't resist it. I helped Margie Phelps, who was the attorney for her father, the Westboro Baptist Church in the Rutherford case. They came to Charlottesville, and I was on a moot court session. I played Justice Roberts. And I'd done interviews. I got to know her over a couple of years. Very distasteful to youth, by the way. And got her ready to argue her case, and she won it before the Supreme Court. Very, very good job of arguing it. But the day that I helped her prepare, and again, I'd interviewed her on our website a couple of times, as Voltaire said, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll go to the death to defend it. That's my view. But after I helped her get all set up and she knew it, I shook her hand that day and started to walk away, and she said, by the way, John, fag lovers like you need to take it up the butt. To which I said, I wanted to turn around and go. I went, thank you, Margie. And she said, God bless you, John. I said, God bless you, Margie. True story. Unsettling, but true. Anyway, in my 40 years, I've run across some pretty strange folks, believe it or not. I've run across some great people. 40 years in this area of constitutional law and civil liberties. Again, I've defended every stripe of person. Some of the most offensive people on the planet, but they do have a First Amendment right to say what they believe. I actually started, by the way, back in the 1980s researching the National Security Agency. Believe it or not, they were doing domestic snooping at that time. Some cases broke forward, and I actually wrote about the National Security Agency. So I'm not new to this happening, and I've written on the National Security Agency over the years. So when people were shocked that they were downloading all this information on American citizens in violation of the law, the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment says that you can't conduct surveillance on American citizens unless you have, anybody know?
Probable cause.
There you go. Which means they have to have some evidence you're doing something illegal, you're up to something. So what the National Security Agency does, it bypasses the Fourth Amendment. I've had people say, well, you have nothing. If there's nothing illegal or whatever, what do you have to worry about? Well, I respond by saying, our country rests on one key principle, the rule of law. And the rule of law says they can't do that. Second, and I detail this in my new book, The Government of Wolves, groups like the FBI, they collected 17,000 pages of information on Martin Luther King to discredit him. An agent actually sent Martin Luther King, an FBI agent, a letter saying he should commit suicide. And they were going to destroy his life. They were going to detail to the press what he was doing in private, which is nobody's business. Anything that I do or you do private, if it's not illegal, it's your business, and we don't want the government in our lives. And so we're going to go after the troublemakers. And so that's what I see coming down the line. A Government of Wolves, the title comes from Edward R. Murrow's great quote, a nation of sheep begets a government of wolves. He understood it early on. So and you older folks in here, as well as I, remember he fought McCarthyism, which was spearheaded by the so-called secret agencies trying to ferret out people who had contact or some kind of association with communists or whatever, destroyed people's lives. So he saw it early on. So none of this is actually new. Over my career, I've just seen it build to the point where, I'll be honest with you, the last couple of years, I've been creeped out. I told my wife the other night, I said, this is the creepiest I've ever felt in my life. When an FBI agent on CNN admitted a month ago that the FBI is downloading most of our phone calls, your phone calls and my phone calls. Wow. What do they think we are? What does that mean? If the FBI, which is part of the police, I use the word police, I'm talking about anybody in a uniform that supposedly enforces the law. If they're watching you, what do you call it? If the police are watching you, what are you? Anybody tell me? A suspect, yeah. So, we live in a society where basically we're all some form of a suspect. Is that a free society? No. I have people like Nat Henhoff, you know who he is, the great civil libertarian. He told me several years ago, he said, I kept saying we're moving into a police state. He said, John, we're already there. When they're watching us, when they're creating what I call in my book an electronic concentration, they're watching everything we're doing, we're in a police state already. And hopefully there's some solutions. 2015, by the way, is a breakwater year. Does anybody know why? Something big is going to happen.
The FAA is supposed to be a law passed about drones.
Drones will begin flying legally over the United States. Lo and behold, the FBI admitted a couple of days ago that they're already doing it. They're already flying over people's homes. I've written on drones for 2 or 3 years now, and our policy analyst here, Mike Kabari, and I have looked at the drone situation. And what we discovered with drones is these things are awesome. They're going to have scanning devices. They'll be able to fly over your home, look in your home and see exactly what you're doing. Let's say you're at home, you're a hunter, got a legal firearm. You're cleaning your weapon. Drone flies over your home, and there you are with that gun. Drone reports it to the local police. What do you think might happen pretty soon? If you've done any kind of record, you're probably going to knock on the door. Drones, the miniature drones, are far out. How many people have gone on YouTube to see the hummingbird? Please go on YouTube and watch it. It looks like an actual bird. It's about that big. It can fly around your property, look in your window, listen. By the way, drones can download stuff from Wi-Fi. They can hack into your electronic, your computers, download all your information. So what I'm saying is, with the national security agency, we've just seen the tip of the iceberg. In fact, I've said, I usually show my cell phone to people. They say, what do you think the technology is like? And I hold my cell phone. If I have this, what do they have? If I have this, what do they have? So, are all people in government evil? No, they're not. All police. I work with some good policemen. I've actually had national security agents come by my office and talk to me. I had one not too long ago that was 30 years in national security agency. And he just came by to say, I appreciate your work. I've had a number of people in government that work in secret agencies say that, which is, makes me feel pretty good, I think. But he said, John, I said, you may not realize this. He said, they're undercutting the numbers of what the NSA does. They actually download 1 trillion communications from the internet every month. That's text messages, telephone calls, anything you're doing, they're downloading and working with the FBI and the CIA. And I said, wow, that's far out. And I checked it with another guy I met who worked in the agency, and he agreed, yeah, that's probably true. So they're doing a lot more than we think they're doing. And the question is why they're doing it. Is there something wrong with us? Do we need to be watched? As in my book, I say, hey, we've become human goldfish. We're watched. Living in a free country. If you live in a free country, should you be looking over your shoulder? Who's watching? Back to drones. Drones are going to be everywhere. It's a $30 billion a year industry. It's the cornerstone of President Obama's war effort. The government's going to have lots of them. They're going to be armed with personnel weapons of every kind. You get rubber bullets, tasers, sound cannons, scanners, I said. Your neighbors are going to be collecting information as well. Some people say, what can we do about these things? Well, what did we do here in Charlottesville? I wrote a law, and the city council passed it. It sent a message across the country. It said, we don't want drones with weapons, okay, and we don't want them when they collect information. If your neighbor's watching you with a drone and you do something they don't like and they want to report you to the police, should they be able to use that against you in the court of law? Well, I'm really nervous about that. Because how many people have ever had a bad neighbor who didn't like me? So, and I think it'll be used against distance. The other thing about drones, all this technology I talk about in the book, is that if you're on the street corner, and I've defended a lot of First Amendment protesters, again, weird and not weird, who are out there doing a good job, and I like people no matter who they are. A lot of people complain about the Occupy people. I like anybody out there stirring things up. You're on the street corner, 5 of you with a sign. Back 20 years ago, a policeman would walk up and say, what are you doing out here? I mean, by what authority? Well, we have a little brochure, and I'm going to give each of you one tonight to get a book. People carry it in their pocket. And so I remember some protesters called me and said, it worked. The policeman said, why, what authority do you have a right to be out on the public sidewalk? This guy pulls out our little card and says, here, and he read the Fourth Amendment to the policeman. He went, yeah, okay. He walked off. He gave me a call and said, it works. There's a lot of policemen that don't understand the Fourth Amendment. So what drones I think are going to do, that policeman's not going to be there anymore. If you go on YouTube, you can see the dragonfly drones. If anybody's seen the dragonfly drones, they fly in formation. They're the size of dragonflies. Those will be equipped with some weapons, probably. The new mosquito prototype drone is the size of a mosquito. It's designed to land on you and extract your DNA. Have you seen pictures of it? You can go on YouTube and see pictures of it. But here's the thing. I just thought about that and said, it can extract DNA, but can it inject? That's what mosquitoes do, right? We're being told it's going to take DNA samples. But let's say you're a group of people who are really getting feisty out here at the park and you're telling the police to stick it, which you have a right to do in America, but you're going to get arrested if you do it. Just send in a fleet of mosquito drones. Drug the people or bypass. I'm afraid drones, all the electronic stuff we're seeing, may stand for free speech protest, which to me is the basis of our republic. So those are the issues I talked about in the book. I'm concerned about the militarization of the police. There are 80,000 SWAT team raids occurring across the United States every year, up to about 30,000 from 10 years ago. It's going to increase. Starting under the Reagan administration, the Department of Defense, the Pentagon began handing out free, and they still do it, military equipment to local police agencies. Assault vehicles, helicopters, flak jackets, Kelvar helmets, assault rifles, blah, 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 blah. Military equipment. If you studied the Founding Fathers, what did they say about standing army? Does anybody know? Not a good deal. Because they had been under a standing army, what we would call often today in some of our cities, the police. We helped Brandon Rutherford. He was a Marine who last August had returned from Afghanistan. He saw some things he didn't like in Afghanistan, corruption. And I'm talking to a lot of vets returning. They don't like what they're seeing. They say bad things happen. Corruption, basically, cash being, American cash being given to so-called terrorists or whatever. Well, he posted some anti-government rants, basically. He quoted a rapper. He was in a private Facebook game he was playing called Mr. Illuminati or Dear Illuminati, whatever it was called. The FBI got in and saw him. His sister, and his brother were playing this dangerous game, which half of the kids in America play with, by the way. And he had a few anti-government rants. He didn't target anybody. So on August 16th last year, he's a fanatic jogger, really in shape. You know, he's a Marine. He hears noise outside, so he looks out the window. 10 black vans drive up on his driveway. Out jumps black-clad people, cops, local police, people who identify themselves as the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Secret Service. They asked Brandon Robb, who served his country well, by the way, a soldier who took weapons away from terrorists, Al-Qaeda. They asked him to step out, and he did. Then they began questioning him. He said, "Why are you here?" And they said, "It's your Facebook post. We've been watching your Facebook." They actually got into his private grouping, which you can't do unless you're snooping. And he started explaining himself. He said, well, I've done this. I saw what was happening over there, and I just felt I have a First Amendment right, don't I? Cling. They grabbed him, handcuffed him, took him out, shoved him against the fence, put him in a police car, and took him away. We called the police station, and we asked, what did he do? What's the charge? The police chief said, no charge, he didn't do anything illegal. But under the civil commitment statute in Virginia, we have a right to do this if we're concerned with mental illness. A 1.5-minute meeting with a psychiatrist in the jail cell. The psychiatrist, 1.5 to 2 minutes is what Brandon estimates. 2 or 3 questions. The psychiatrist said his long pauses in answering indicated he had a mental illness.
And what?
A mental illness. He was taken away, put in a mental hospital. We got him out in a week. We went into court, presented evidence to a normal, rational judge. And the judge said, there's not a shred of evidence. He was mad, the judge said, get this guy out. It's a insane asylum, he shouldn't be there. Interesting story. The day before we got him out, Brandon Robb, again, this is a tough Marine who kicks butt. He called me, he said, I'm really frightened, Joe. I said, what are you frightened of? Looks like we're gonna get you out. He said, there's a psychiatrist sitting here. He says he's gonna brainwash me. He's gonna force me out of there. And I replied, the psychiatrist is on the phone listening to this conversation because he couldn't have a private conversation. I said, why don't you tell the psychiatrist something from me, even though he's listening? He's violating the law. You have to have a court order to force meds on anybody in Virginia. 2, he's violating your constitutional rights. He needs to get out of your room, or we're gonna sue him. The next day we got him out. That's how they treated this guy. He was lucky, very fortunate. His mother got a hold of us right away. There are over 20,000 civil commitments in Virginia alone each year. Many people don't know where they go, how long they're in. People forget about it. 1.5 million a year in America. A reporter from LA County called me all freaked out. She said 80,000 alone in LA County, Los Angeles County. So something's wrong in the country, folks. If you think I'm conspiratorial, no. Everything I say in my book, I'm a heavy footnoter. I'm a lawyer. Heavy footnote on what's happening. Maybe if I want people to have a chance to ask questions. How long have we been speaking to right now? What time is it? Yeah. A few things here. And again, before I started this book, I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading. I came across some parallels in history, which kind of frightened me, to be honest with you. I studied Nazi Germany, and the parallels kept leading me there for a number of reasons. And I had a group of students studying with me from the University Intern Program at the University of Virginia. They study year-round with the Rutherford Institute. I said, am I writing a new book? I need some really aggressive SWAT team raids to show the parallels. 2 months later, they came up and they said, we really couldn't find many, mostly in fiction. But then they presented me with this paper saying, the German people cooperated. Hitler was very, very popular. He came in with change and hope. He's going to revive the economy. He's going to make us strong again. He's going to have an army, world army. People loved it. And so he was very, very popular. There's a great book called Friendly Fascism by a guy named Bertram Gross, who worked for FDR, by the way, and Harry Truman. He wrote a book called Friendly Fascism in 1980 where he says, it's coming. It's coming. And he said, the fascist state may be up quicker than we think. And I read the book back then, I went crazy. But he has a really neat section on how the corporate hierarchy of that day really liked Hitler. A fellow actually walks out of a room, the press is waiting, he's a big corporate executive, and the press say, what did you think? You know what he said? We just hired Hitler after that Hitler run. As early as, I think, 1934, 1935, there were articles in newspapers detailing what was happening in the concentration camps in the German newspapers. But people went along with it. So, I'm afraid you can walk out of this room and discount what I'm saying. You can discount everything I'm saying, but I'm afraid those of us who are asleep are going to wake up some morning there's gonna be a knock on the door, and you're gonna wonder why that policeman's there. In Nazi Germany, it was the other people who turned in the other citizens, irritating neighbors. After all, they needed workers for the concentration camps, whom they worked to death. I don't know if you knew this, but there's a great book by Richard Rubenstein called The Cunning of History, a Jewish fellow, 1975 book, where he shows that what they actually did in the concentration camps, they would feed people minimally, so that their actual lifespan in the camp was 2 to 3 weeks. They collapsed from lack of food. Overpopulation, they got rid of them, but they made rubber products in Auschwitz for Europe. It was essentially a private prison. Has anybody heard of the private prison things rising in America today? Becoming a big thing in America. Where states, by the way, in order to get the money from the corporations, have to keep the jails 90% full, so they have to pass more laws. I have a section of the book called The Overcriminalization of America, which you should read and take seriously. So, what I would say is there's some bad things coming down. We can ignore it, and I've been in this area 40 years, could quit, move somewhere. I've actually had a few Secret Service agents working at Secret Service units saying they're leaving the country. I asked them why. They said, doesn't look good, and I don't want to be here if something bad really happens. So, the question is, what can we do? My opinion is, again, people ask me, why do I keep doing this? Why don't I just retire and go away? Which I could. I have grandchildren. I see children walking along the streets. I don't want them to wake up some morning in a place where no one really wants to live like has happened in former regimes. Because the parallels are there. They're alluded to in my book. If you need some good books to read on that, there are tons out there. Robert Gellately's book called Backing Hitler, a professor, a very good book on these things. So, what can we do? What does the First Amendment say? We have a right to what? Associate, protest, petition the government for redress of grievances. Yeah, that's a good thing to do. But like some of the people we know, they get arrested, but they take their case to court. You might win it. We just won a big case for Harold Hodge, African American standing from the Supreme Court, January 2011, snowy day, no one else out there, very cold. He's standing out there with a sign around his neck, and he made himself saying, the police in America brutalize African Americans and Hispanics. He was arrested for being on the Supreme Court Plaza, which is huge. He was far to the left. He wasn't blocking, he wasn't even near the steps of the Supreme Court. There was a 64-year-old law made by Congress saying it's illegal to be out there if you're communicating a message. We just won the case. A federal judge 2 weeks ago ruled that that law was repugnant to the Constitution. Good ruling. I mean, we're really heartened. The very next day, the Supreme Court passed its own law, reinstating the congressional law, saying no one could be out there. Even broader than the congressional law. Reading the law, it says you can't do anything to communicate a message out on that huge plaza. I thought, well, gee, what about those Girl Scouts that stop and say, buy our cookies? That's against the law. We have to now file another lawsuit, and guess who we have to appeal to? The Supreme Court. They made their own law. Judges make their own law. So that's the state of affairs. The courts are not going to be all that friendly. I mean, I've been in and out of court for years, and some of our attorneys are here, they know that as well. So what can you do? I think we sent a strong message here in Charlottesville. We passed our drone legislation. It's very strong. 3 other cities now have adopted the legislation. We sent it to all 50 states and Congress. But don't Congress, well, you never know what's going on there. You can take local action. One of my heroes and a friend of mine, Pete Seeger. How many people remember Pete Seeger? He's become a good friend of mine. He endorsed my last book, by the way. Pete had that great slogan, act nationally, think globally. Well, I kind of reduced it and said act locally, think nationally. Stole it. Just pare it down. But yeah, you can make a big impact locally, but you have to get involved. There shouldn't be city council meetings here that with empty seats, especially when they're deciding big shit, taxing and all the things that we see. If you don't like the way things are operating here, turn the TV set off and get involved. I mean, you can get your neighbors involved. If you see people being treated unfairly in the community, help your neighbors, get involved. I think it has to start there. If you're not willing to do it, then it's not going to happen. We're all going to be out someday. But here's the reason, again, I'll say it. If you have grandkids or children, I believe it's your duty to get involved. Don't sit and watch TV and be entertained to death. I talk a lot about that. That's what Aldous Huxley saw as the future. People would be entertained to death. You would sit and watch bad things. But as for me, I'm with Thomas Paine, who said, in the first paragraph of Common Sense, the book, by the way, that George Washington read to the troops to get them excited about fighting back. He said, we create the instruments by which we suffer. By our inaction and lack of action, we're now faced with a government that's watching us, that, as the Supreme Court says, if a SWAT team, 2 years ago at Kentucky versus King, if a SWAT team arrives at your door, it's the wrong address. You're the wrong person. They don't have a warrant. If they think you're doing something illegal, they can go through your door. Wow. Whatever happened to the Fourth Amendment? So that's the lay of the land. I've been doing this for 40 years, and like I said, the last year and a half, 2 years, I've gotten really freaked out. And it's made me even a little bit more radical. I had someone once say, you're a real radical. So I went to the dictionary and looked up the word radical. The root word for radical is radix, R-A-D-I-X. You know what that means? Foundation. I thought, isn't that interesting? The radicals are the foundation of society. They create the freedoms. So I would ask every one of you in here, be a radical. You can start here, little pieces here and there. Start maybe with this book. I don't make any money off of this stuff. Start with this book, read it. I've got an action plan on the back I think you can use. Become educated. Education precedes action. How many people have read the Bill of Rights? Pretty good. It's 462 words. Most people have never read the Bill of Rights. It's not taught well in the schools. In some schools, it's not taught well at all. So, average law student I talk to, a lawyer that can't. I have yet to find. Several years ago, I spoke to a group of 150 best lawyers probably in this area on our cases. I stopped in the middle of my speech and just wanted to conduct an experiment. So I said, can any lawyer in this room, my wife was there, can any lawyer in this room give me the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment? I waited. It was real quiet. My wife was at the back of the room. She's back there. She later told me, they were all going, wow, what is it, the freedom of this, freedom of that? One guy in the front row went, I went, yes, and he goes, civics? Whatever happened to civics? So, education precedes action. Know the Bill of Rights, which is the gift that we gave to the world, by the way. Pushed heavily by Thomas Jefferson, Madison, and the great founding fathers. I've got time for a few questions if you'd like to ask them.